Hello, welcome back to another fun-filled episode of the Hammercast. I am your host, Alex, the Hebrew Hammer Salkin, and joining me today is Matt Roberts, all the way from the UK. Maybe you've heard of it. It's kind of a big deal. Now, today we're going to be talking about all manner of things, particularly as it pertains to diet and nutrition. And one of the things that I really like about Matt, had a chat with him last week, as of the time of this recording. He's got a very good head on his shoulders pertaining to how to train and eat for success, not for short-term success, but for long-term success. And so I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'm going to let him take it away momentarily. And before we get started, I want to remind the listeners, if this is your first time hearing it, and you've never heard me crow about this before, I highly recommend that you get your hands on my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge. As the name implies, it only takes 9 minutes to do. It's designed to be done in conjunction with your regular training. I like to call it kind of like an amplifier as opposed to, a whole separate program. And it is also based around movements that you can learn in minutes, maybe even seconds, largely because they're based around movements you already know. So gait pattern movements such as crawling, loaded carries, and things like that. And they're a lot of fun to do. I've had people reach out, tell me that not only do they enjoy it, but that it's helped them improve their squats, their military presses, pull-ups in some cases. And probably everybody's favorite part about it is that it is free. So all you have to do is go to 9minutechallenge.com and get your own free copy. That is the number 9minutechallenge.com. So without further ado, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
But it's a pleasure. I have to say, I'm intrigued by the spelling of your name because I similarly have a strange spelling of my name. Mine is Aleks, and yours is Mat, just one T. So I got to get that question out of the way before we do anything. Why the one T?
That's my mother.
That was her decision.
She decided to just put one T. Yeah, I mean there is quite a few Matthews with one T, but a lot of people do get it wrong. They kind of put two T's in it. It doesn't really piss me off, so no offense taken.
Yeah, you know what? I have to say the same thing because, my name being Aleks, people think, oh my gosh, I've had people, even friends of mine, who reach out and then misspell my name. And I don't think anything about it. I'm like, it's either autocorrect or it's just a slip of the mind. But I know what they mean, But people think you get really offended. And I think part of it is because, our name is like one of our most prized possessions. And if you screw that up and you're not referring to people by their name appropriately, at least in writing, I think they don't like it. Now, I will say if somebody calls me a different name, that I find a little bit off-putting. I'm sure you've had that before. Someone will call you like Mark or,
Matty or Math. The popular ones. Very American Matty, isn't it? Matty. The Americans like good Maddie. Maddie, is it?
Yeah.
Maddie.
Yeah, we like to do the little diminutives, give people a little kind of like a nickname, but it really only works if you're friends with the person. If somebody's just like, if somebody I barely know starts calling me a nickname and I don't feel like I've got the rapport with them, I'm like, somebody's up to something, they're either going to try to ask me for money or they're going to do something else. So you gotta kind of earn the right to give somebody else a nickname, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously a lot of my mates will call me Matt, but generally the only person what calls me Matthew is my mother, probably when I've done something wrong. I'm in trouble or something, should we say? Even to this day, probably. When you hear the word Matthew, it's my mum.
You're like, oh boy. Yeah, what did I do? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would say that for me, it was always the middle name. If I heard my middle name, it was like, oh boy, and I don't know why, but that stopped, I think, after I got older. But it was like, yeah, if I heard my that's the thing in America. Actually, I don't know if it's like that in the UK at all, but if you hear your first name and your middle name, it's like you're in big trouble. Like first name is like a warning. First and middle name, it's like you're in trouble.
Well, to be honest, I've not got a middle name, to be honest. Yeah, that was another one. My mum decided not to give me a middle name, so maybe we should get my mum on the podcast.
Right. Well, I guess in your case, then that means the escalation is immediate because the minute you hear your name and it's the full Matthew, you're like, okay, it's game over for sure. Well, origins of our names aside, I am very curious about your origin in the fitness world in general, because I think a lot of the people that I know who've gotten involved in fitness as a profession didn't assume that they were going to get into fitness as a profession. It was something that they discovered that they wanted to do later. And so, what was your kind of like origin story from back when you were a kid all the way until
Yeah.
you decided to join the fitness industry? How did you get to that point?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, high school, started to play sports. Wasn't very much into sport, what I say. I would say probably rugby, athletics, a bit more shying towards sprinting, a bit more powerful in my legs. Um, but obviously, started typical 13 years old, started training, got into typical like reading magazines, started resistance training, body weight mainly to start off with, at the age of 13. And then we had access to a school gym. So obviously at school we started using a bit of weights then. Wasn't very structured, just like playing around with it basically. Um, and then started to as I started to get towards like say 14, 15, that's where I started to say do a bit more, be a bit more conscious about the body, shall we say. Um, not to say that I was overweight or anything, but obviously started to use it, started to see the little changes in the body. So obviously started to do a few push-ups on the floor. You know, as a guy, as a kid, everyone likes to do push-ups, maybe too much of them sometimes. Um, but yeah, I mean, I started to do a little bit of exercise, started using the gym a lot, reading a lot of magazines, and I started to implement it into my own training. Seeing that the body was changing and stuff, and obviously it kind of took me down the route of basically in the last year of high school. To cut a long story short, I started to take it a little bit too far, and that turned into like an eating disorder in the last year of high school. Obviously, it turned into like restricting food. I mean, it didn't just come overnight. It was a case of just started seeing the physical changes, exercising normally a couple of days a week. Then it went into maybe every day. Then it went into obviously hiding food, not eating meals. Obviously, in the last year of high school, I did know you kind of don't acknowledge it. You kind of think that you're tall all the time. People are commenting on your weight loss. First of all, when it starts with an eating disorder, like especially with me, it was I started to lose a little bit of puppy fat, and I wasn't really fat. I just wanted to like get abs, and as you do as a kid. Um, Even though I look back nowadays and my hands are probably really skinny, and it was just like nothing on me compared to obviously what I was like. Um, and then it just snowballed into something else. Obviously, slight like addictive natures with suppose most people kind of got addictive natures with exercise, like 0 to 100. So you're either all in, you're either not in it at all, or you're doing too much. And that's what kind of happened. It kind of snowballed into missing meals first. Then I started to cut certain macronutrients out, maybe carbohydrates, eating too much protein. Then it was basically cutting protein down, not really eating anything. And then it come to a point where my parents obviously knew about it at high school. I remember once I was in science class and the science teacher was taking body temperatures in the class, and my temperature was really low. And obviously, the teachers pulled my parents into school, and obviously that got drawn things. Obviously, my parents had to explain then, yeah, he's going through changes, and obviously he's having help through it. The doctors have already pulled us in, and then yeah, I mean, obviously when I left school, it got even worse. It just snowballed. It snowballed to the point where it's all I could think about, really. Is obviously I didn't have it's like then you don't have a know, you don't know what a carbohydrate is. You just feel like you just read certain things and then you listen to your friends and you start to cut certain macronutrients out. And then it turned into literally a full-blown eating disorder. So like obviously at the age of I think it was like 16, if I'm correct. I mean I'm 40 now, but at the age of 16, and obviously I was under the doctor. I was training every day. I remember I used to set my alarm in the mornings before my parents got up. I used to over exercise. Obviously, as a guy as well. I mean, obviously, looking back now when I work with guys and females with certain eating issues and stuff, it's very much from a guy point of view. It's very much into over exercising. I think a lot of females do that now as well. Um, but I do find that females shy more towards say bulimia. So instead of anorexia and stuff, obviously been making themselves sick and stuff.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, obviously, worst case. So what happened? It went on for quite a few years into college. Obviously, then by then I started to join the gym. Um, I was going to the gym quite a lot, so going to the gym for like 3 hours at a time, doing far too much. I mean, it started off first way. I just go for an hour, and then before you know it, it was literally out of control. It was like 3 hours a day in the gym. All my days surrounded about keeping my weight down, not eating food, hiding food. Obviously, by this point, my parents were there was a lot of arguments going on at this point. Obviously, my mum and dad caused a lot of friction in the family. As you can imagine, it's not just you what's going through it, it's your loved ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically went over a couple of years, come to the point one day where I went to go to bed, didn't really want to change and stuff, and then I literally could not get out of bed. I literally, all my face was swollen, um, all my legs were swollen. Got rushed to hospital, and then from there spent some time in hospital where I got admitted, and then I obviously actually put a strain on my heart muscle. So I put a strain on my heart. Was on heart medication. I was on certain tablets for the water retention on the body, and then it kind of like that was a case of like even in hospital nowadays. I mean, I don't mind speaking about it. It's very open about it nowadays. There's a lot of years where I've kind of like hid it and not really spoken about it and felt pretty ashamed about it, especially what you put your mum and dad through, and obviously my brother was involved with seeing things and stuff. And you kind of look back, but it's now I don't mind speaking about it. It's kind of like you kind of have to speak about it, and obviously working with people as well, and it's acknowledging it. But obviously, when I was in hospital, I basically was in hospital for like 8 weeks. I think it was around about 8 weeks, and then even then in hospital, I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to change. The doctors were pulling me aside, and they were monitoring me all the time, trying to feed me. Didn't want to eat. Still exercising, even in hospital, I was exercising. I used to go to the toilet, lock myself in the hospital toilet, and trying to do my push-ups and keep my weight down. And all the staff was aware of this. Um, and then when I come out of hospital, obviously I was emaciated because my body was breaking down, lost a lot of muscle tissue, had a lot of joint problems, balance was affected, legs was affected. And then it was a case of maybe having counselling, having a nutritionist, maybe to try and understand nutrition, trying to understand how the body works. And even at that point, like probably 12 months after coming out of hospital, I didn't really want to change. There were still arguments in the family. I was trying to I went to college at the time. So I was doing art college. I was very much into design, graphics design and arts. And I was trying to study around my art studies whilst having this eating disorder. Um, and then it kind of like it went all right. Started to want to build a body a bit. Started to research online myself in terms of how to eat properly and how to fuel the body with training. Um, then it got towards 20 where I did put a little bit of weight on. I kind of people thought to see myself coming out of it. But then at 20, I had like I think it was just before 20, I had like a relapse again. So I had a bit of a relapse, kind of went back into it again. Same thing again. Training took over. Kind of shut myself away. Over exercising every day and stuff. And then it comes to a point where I suppose I was just. People always said there's a trigger behind it. There's a trigger behind it sometimes, and I would just say more for me. It was more maybe body image and that feeling of exercise, that like endorphin rush, and that like because exercise can be addictive in the wrong way. You got to have the right balance with it. Um, and basically, when I was doing out of college, I kind of like when I got 20, I had a bit of a relapse, and I decided then I really wanted to change. I was sick of my body breaking down. I was sick of having no energy. I was sick of being like crap, basically. And then obviously, you don't want to listen to your parents at the time. So I did have counselling, decided to come out of it, and then I did start to want to gain weight. But obviously, the funny thing is, actually wanted to gain weight and muscle tissue, I found it very hard. So I was trying to eat a lot more food, and at the time, obviously, I was thinking, obviously, when you have anorexia, you're scared of even eating like an apple, even anything. Even half a piece of fruit would even scare the hell out of you. Obviously, when I come over that hurdle of trying to want to eat more, obviously, it was a process of doing it steadily and then gaining the muscle and the weight over time, and then having a healthy relationship with food,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what food is, which I feel like a lot of people sometimes, especially from a weight loss point of view, people kind of look at food as a very restrictive thing, even eating healthily. Um, they're very much like the word diet. I don't like the word diet. I feel like diet it makes a person feel like they're being restricted already. So as soon as you say the word diet to someone, you're automatically making that person feel like it's restricting things, and it's being very restrictive in terms of what they're doing. But anyway, I went through college, decided to rebuild the body up, and that's why I did take more things online. So I was reading more books on nutrition. I did start to study about the body more and performance. I did want to get stronger. And then obviously it was typically going down like your bodybuilding type of split where you read the magazines, you pick a program out of a magazine, you go to the gym, and it was typically like your upper body day, your lower body day, and you're doing the right race, you're doing too much race, you're doing too much on one muscle group basically. And then even then I found it out in terms of training. But at least my weight was in the right way. Um, Kind of went through college, and then I decided to obviously I've kind of dropped out of art college basically. Didn't wasn't really working for me, wasn't really my thing. I've always been into training. So even when I was younger, I'd like read programs, I'd design programs for friends. Friends had said to me, Matty, can you do me this program? I'd always design for them. I'd train friends. I'd find that I'm getting results with friends, with certain like friends who do boxing. I'd train like strength programs for them and stuff like that. So to get a lot of results, like using my friends as guinea pigs, really, in terms of training programs. And then I decided, obviously, I wanted to study to become more personal trainer. Obviously, go down that route to study about the body more due to what I was doing, nutrition wise. And then, kind of, obviously, later on in life, I re-certified as a personal trainer, specialised a bit more in nutrition, sports nutrition, studied on that. And then, obviously, later down the lines, I've become a bit more specific in terms of what I do. Very early on, when I was starting personal training, working in different gyms, I was very much like trying to do everything for everyone. So trying to be the bodybuilding guy, trying to be the stability guy, trying to be whatever, like the fat loss guy. And obviously it didn't really work. And now I kind of got a niche in terms of what I do. I've gone down the strength and conditioning route. I've got certifications in that. I've gone a bit more rehab. So I work with people with a lot of injuries now. Um, Especially consult with like physios and sports rehabilitators on injuries. I work with that, and then I specialize obviously working with eating disorders, so anorexia, bulimia, connecting to local counsellors in terms of like helping people with eating disorders. Um, on the other end of the spectrum, I have worked with obesity as well. So we've helped people with severely overweight. So like I've had a guy who's been 30 stone, 25 stone, and we've got them obviously to drop weight naturally, slowly, steadily, and obviously in the right approach. But yeah, it's been a bit of I love my job. I love it now, but obviously it seemed to me like a bit of a slog to get there. But I got there in the end, basically.
Absolutely. You know, first of all, I wanted to ask, you mentioned 25 stone and 30 stone. These are, well, I think that's 14 pounds or maybe what, like about 6 or so kilos per stone. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. So we eat 2.2 pounds in a kilo.
Correct.
So it's
Yeah.
2.2 pounds in a kilo.
And then how much in a stone?
There's 14 pounds
It
in
is
in
14
in a
pounds. Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So folks, do the math. He's helping
Yeah.
people of all different
Yeah.
types, people who are overweight, people who are underweight. And I think that you have a
Yeah.
very unique ability to it. It's a good thing that you're sharing your story because number one, I think most people don't really think about men as having eating disorders, maybe body image disorders where they're like, oh, I don't look like Arnold, or I don't look enough like, Brad Pitt in Fight Club or, whatever
Yeah.
physique it is that they're after. But I think a lot of people don't realize that, anorexia and bulimia and some of these other eating disorders can also affect men. And because of that, there are a lot fewer resources for it. And similarly, even if people haven't
Hmm.
gotten to that point where they have an all-out eating disorder or a diagnosed eating disorder, I would imagine that you're working with a lot of men and women who, as you pointed out earlier, maybe don't have a very good relationship with food. They don't really know what it's
Hmm.
for, what it does, apart from the
Yeah.
obvious. You have to eat it if you want to survive,
Yeah.
but they don't have a deeper insight and understanding of exactly what that means. And how do you
Yeah.
find that your struggles early on and your ability to overcome them have helped you to work with people who otherwise fall through the cracks, even with really great degreed professionals?
Yeah. Obviously, I see you could have a full blown eating disorder. So I've helped people with eating disorders after they've come out of like hospital and they want to rebuild the body and they want to learn about nutrition and educate them. Um, you've also got the kind of people you've kind of got like you've got kind of two ends of the spectrum. You've got kind of like someone who's started training for ages and they've got really into nutrition. They start losing a bit of weight and they start feeling good about themselves. The friends are commenting on it, and then next minute they're taking it far too far. So it comes to the point where that person can't have a rest day. They can't even take a day off the gym. They feel like they're restricting food. They feel like they're missing meals, and it's not something that comes overnight. So it might start off where I'm having a chat with someone where they feel like they've started off missing breakfast and they feel like they can't have breakfast anymore because that's keeping them in a calorie deficit and that's making them lose weight, and then they go to have breakfast, and then before you know it, they start to cut lunch out and they start to cut the dinner out, and then it turns into a full-blown eating disorder. And there's different traits. I mean, we tend to look at, obviously it's hard when you've got an eating disorder because you don't want to listen to even the coach what's saying it to you. I mean, I tend to work with people who really want to change at that point, where we're using exercises not to fuel fat loss. We're using it just to keep them understanding that you can still train and increase energy and increase strength and work on power and stuff, and increase your appetite, especially for getting comfortable with eating food and things like that around the sessions. Um, and then it would snowball into they start to maybe incorporate a little meal back into the daily routine, and then they would incorporate another meal, and then before you know it, they're incorporating more carbohydrates, and they can see the difference in the energy's changing, and the sleep's getting better, and it's a snowball effect. Um, but you might get somebody who come to you who doesn't really feel like they've got a eating disorder, but then when you kind of say like, well, do you feel like by eating that little bit of chocolate or by not having that even them not having the carbohydrates in the evening meal, do you feel like is that a normal thing to do? And then they say, like, well, yeah, maybe not. And they are doing like a restricted regime. It's like the females. I see this with females quite a bit who come to me and they have wine on a Friday night and a Saturday night, and then they go out having quite a lot of drinks, alcohol drinks, and then on a Sunday comes, they feel like because they've drunk a lot of alcohol, they have to restrict. So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday is all about eating very low calories, missing meals to compensate what they've done in terms of the alcohol. But it's building momentum. It's making the person understand that let's look at food from a what it is. Food's healthy. Food is energy. Food is recovery. Food is performance. Food is better sleep. It's not about too many people look at food like even like when you're eating healthy, it's very bit restrictive. It's very in the restrictive mindset of like can't have this, I can't have that. Even like people who eat healthy for ages and then they find that even like having just a little bit of chocolate will make them feel so guilty that they've had that little tiny bit of chocolate. That's not going to do nothing. It's understanding, it's having a healthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
Um, and it's having a balanced diet as well. So obviously everyone's got allergies and everyone's got certain issues with foods. I've got allergies myself. I'm celiac. I've got certain allergies with lactose milk as well, and I work a lot with a lot of people with allergies. Obviously, if you've got allergies and the food's not agreeing with you and it's causing bloating and things like that, you are going to take it out of your nutrition. But it's also looking at a balanced diet. So I always find that sometimes people shy towards an high protein diet or a too much fat or low carbohydrate, and it's looking at the importance of each macronutrient and looking at, well, why are you doing that? Is it because you read a diet book what says that? Is it because your friend has told you that? Well, let's look at your performance in the gym. I mean, when we're on a low calorie diet, when people come to me and they've started training in the gym, and they said 20 minutes into the session they've got no energy. And then you would say to them, what have you had before training? Have you had anything? Well, I only ate my meal at 11 o'clock this morning, but it's 6 o'clock at night, and they've had a last meal at 11 o'clock when they know they're training at 6. They've got no energy, and then you're like, well, why have you not had any like a meal before training? Maybe a couple of pieces of fruit or anything, and then they're very much into like, well, I want to lose weight. I want to lose weight, so they're being very restrictive. But then what they don't understand, it's taking away from the session. They've got no energy. The performance is decreasing, and it's going to have a negative effect on the performance. So it's not
Yeah.
even going to help the fat loss.
You know what?
So it's looking.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Finish your thought. I was going to just toss in a thought of mine. I'm curious to hear what you had to
Yes.
say. Okay, well, that I was going to say this because what I find very interesting about what you're saying, everybody's heard this. I think even if you're not a personal trainer, you've heard, "Oh, I'm not eating as much because I want to lose weight," and you're absolutely right. Number one, obviously, food. We'll say part of its practical use is that it is fuel, and we'll say maybe on the impractical side, there's a cultural side to it. It's we use food to celebrate, we use food to comfort us, or comfort ourselves or what have you. But when it comes to weight loss, the analogy that comes to mind is somebody's like, "Oh, I'm not eating as much because I want to, get to my goals more quickly. I want to lose weight. It's like saying, I want to get to my destination. I want to drive to my destination faster. And I know that if I have more weight in my car, it's going to be bad for the fuel economy. So I'm just not going to put as much fuel in my car and hope that the lack of the weight there is going to help me get it's like it completely not it's a complete non sequitur. People have to
Yeah.
eat properly in order to be able to do the thing that's
Yeah.
essentially the exercise is like pushing on the gas pedal, and then having the
Yeah.
proper amount and the proper quality of gas is what's going to help you to continue toward your goals.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that.
Yeah, I mean, stories like you get your people come on board and they want to lose fat, they want to lose it quick, they want to lose so many pounds in a
Yeah.
month, and they're being very restrictive. And what that creates is that creates unrealistic. It's unrealistic. It's like when you get someone who wants to say do an 8 week course and they want to lose so much weight in 8 weeks, and then they have to train 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and they have to train. They feel like they have to train hard every day, and they feel like you have to cut all the carbohydrates out of the diet, and they feel like they have to do cardio twice a day or whatever it is. And that's just creating, yeah, that'll get the weight off, and it'll probably be the wrong type of weight as well. You probably lose a lot of muscle tissue doing it. Um, but also it's creating an unrealistic approach. That's not sustainable. That's not sustainable for the long term. So my approach is let's just look at being realistic on the size of the person if they're overweight, and maybe that's if that's a goal. And then we would look at, well, I would be realistic about the person. I would say maybe we should look at just losing this over 30 days. Maybe it's not in this time. I don't do that at all. When someone comes on board and they do want to lose weight, I say, first of all, when we look at nutrition, I say, let's look at eating nutrition quality first. Let's look at improving your nutrition quality. Let's look at eating a lot of food, so good foods, wholesome foods, so carbohydrates, lots of vegetables, meats, still having your little treats in there in moderation. Let's look at keeping energy high. Let's look at keeping performance high in the gym. And then, if they say wasn't losing weight, and once they've started to eat a lot more good nutrition quality of foods, then we would look at maybe a portion control. So it would be slight changes of portions, but it's not telling that person to be so restrictive that their energy is going to be crashing through the floor. They've got no performance in the gym. They're going to be on. They're not going to affect their sleep. It's doing it slow and steady, and that's a lot more sustainable. It's all about just my main approach is sustainability, realistic, and then consistency. That's gonna train consistently. It's always like I always say with training. I'm the same myself. When even though I train like 6 days a week now, I mean I don't. No one should train. No one can train hard 6 days a week. I mean, you get people who come into your set. I'm training this, this, and this, and they're training very much too hard, 6 days a week, and it's finding a balance. The actual like your body can really, if you're training properly, you know a couple of days of them sessions out of 7 days a week, he's probably training hard. The rest of the sessions are all low volume, maybe recovery sessions, and you can't train hard every day of the week. And it's
Yeah.
a lot of people say they are training hard every day of the week. They're not because they're coasting. They're eating like 50% optimal performance every day, and they don't realize by adding a bit more recovery training into the training or adding more calories into the nutrition and eating the right type of foods, that's going to fuel performance better. And having and training, I always say training 3 days a week rather than 6 days a week is a lot better in terms of long term performance, strength, health. It's a lot more achievable. And this is the problem with I get when I get people come to me and they're like, they'll say on consultations, I've not got time to train 5, 6 days a week. And you're like, whoever said you have to do that, you don't. We always encourage to train 2 or 3 days a week. And then around that, we do it. I do encourage movement most days, but it might be simple things of like a walk. It might be some mobility exercises, very something very on the lower end of like 10 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
or training the habit of getting that person out the door and walking for 10 to 15 minutes a day. That 10 to 15 minute walk isn't going to develop your fitness a lot, but what it's going to do, it's going to create blood flow and it's going to help you change the habit. It's going to help you get into the habit of just training yourself and getting out the door. Um, but the whole industry, a lot of not all the industry, but there's a lot of in the industry. It's all focused on fat loss and restrict, and it's not. It's more even like the fact once people come through the door. Also, let's focus on performance. If your weights are going up, if you feel like your movement's getting better, if you feel like your energy is all the way through the session, it's not affecting your sleep. Um, we're on it. We're on the right direction. And then what we're going to do then, if that person's not losing weight, it's a slight change in portions to reduce calories, but it's not feeling like you have to be so restricted. I mean, I can't say how many females I've seen what like come to me and they're like, I've been eating, I'm not really losing weight, I feel like crap, I'm not sleeping well, I feel like my weight's not going up, I may feel like I'm getting stronger. And then you look at the nutrition and they're having like 1,000 calories a day and they're training 5 or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And it's especially as a female. I mean, guys as well. I mean, females do tend to feel like they have to be females are supposed to be always on a diet, always
Yeah.
being restricting food. And I tend to coach the female different. Like, look, train like a guy, train for performance. Let's train for strength. Let's eat more food. Let's train for a lot more performance. And it does kind of work eventually. But I feel bad on females because a lot of females and guys nowadays with social media, a lot of females do feel like they have to be constantly on a diet. And I always say to a lot of females, I'll say to them, how long have you been on these calories for? And they'll say something like for 3, 4 years. And I'll be like, you shouldn't be eating this low. I mean, we need to, if you're getting stronger and you're getting fitter, your BMI, your overall calorie expenditure should be increasing.
Hmm.
So if you're with me in the gym and we're eating a balanced diet, and in 12 months' time, we should be able to eat more food and still maintain your weight and increase your overall calorie expenditure. And it's getting the female into that. But a lot of females are very nervous with it at the start, especially from an eating disorder point of view.
Yeah,
Um,
I would imagine.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
what it seems to me that you're doing, and I think that this is exactly it mirrors what I do on the exercise side of things for people who have a difficult time with consistency in their training, is that you're taking people from like an emotional approach to uh, eating and training and moving it to a more habit-based approach where it doesn't even really require discipline per se because you don't have to. I mean, I think with discipline in many cases, the way most people conceive of it, you have to kind of just be like, okay, I'm going to shut out this. I'm using my willpower not to do this and just focus on this instead. But rather, like you mentioned, taking a 15-minute walk. Well, that doesn't get people like, you know, round up like, okay, now I got to hit 2 hours because I just got 15
yeah,
minutes. It's something that they're like, it's almost easier to do than it is not to do. And when they can start to see that they're seeing these changes and they're like, wow,
mm,
this is totally reasonable. I'm not completely wiped out. I'm sleeping better. I feel better. Then they kind of start to buy in that, okay, I don't need to take this hyper emotional approach to the gym or to my eating.
yeah,
This is just a part of my life. It's like brushing my teeth, taking a shower. It's right along this category. But the difference is that in addition to just maybe smelling a little bit nicer, I'm also going to look nicer when I've got the exercise and the nutrition side
yeah.
in place.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you have a consultation with someone and the the whole mindset is, let's say we have a lot of, because I specialize with a lot more movement now and injuries and look at the like low back injuries, shoulder injuries. Um, but you've also got the type of people who, when they come through the door, it's debunking myths and
Yeah.
misconceptions and stuff like that. And obviously, you're looking at things like an elderly lady who says, "I don't want to work strength because she feels like strength is for athletes or
Yeah.
strength is for strong men." And it's understanding. My approach is all about longevity and health and obviously good joint strength and having stability, and that's going to help you not get many as injuries as you're doing and stuff like that. So it's understanding for that person that it's having a balance. So it's having a balance. It's like nutrition, having a balance in all your macros. So same with your training. So as we age, obviously we all know we lose muscle loss as we age, but we also lose strength and power a lot quicker as we age, especially over the age of 40 and things like that. And obviously it's understanding that we're training all areas, so we kind of pinpoint your goals. So we're looking on that lady's goals or that guy's goals, but we're also looking at what the body needs. So I've always said that for years. So I've always said, listen, even though you want to, maybe it's a genetic goal, you want to have a bigger bum as a female, we get a lot, or the chicks, they want these humongous
Yeah.
bums nowadays,
Derriere.
or
Yeah.
the Insta bum, shall we say?
Yeah.
the Insta bum or whatever. But it's being realistic and saying, well, maybe we should work on your limitations. So maybe it's your stability, maybe it's your fitness, maybe it's your strength. So and it's creating symmetry as well, isn't it? So we're looking at balances in the body. We're looking at right arm, right leg, left leg, and it's understand. I mean, I can't say how many people come to me and they still train, especially guys. They'll come to me and they'll be training like they was so like maybe in the late 40s, 50s, and they're training like they was when they were 20.
Yeah.
So they're training like bodybuilding approaches. So I've got a guy at the minute, he's got a shoulder issue and he's showing me his program and I'm looking at it and I'm going like, and he's doing one day where he's doing far too much chest and shoulder work and upright rolls and all sorts. And it's not it's just the fact that he's doing too much in in the wrong type of movements in the wrong ratio for his body. And
Yeah.
it's all about ratios. It's finding like it's not just training the front of the body all the time. It's training the back of the body. It's training not your mirror muscles. It's looking at symmetry and looking at balancing the body into it. And even though we get a fat loss person coming on, they're all about obsessing about the number on the scale, and that's all they're bothered about, his body image. We very much get you into the performance side. So when we get him into the performance side, and then we're looking at tracking simple movements like fundamental movements like a lunge or balance is looking better and your sled push is getting faster or whatever it is. Um, it's getting into the performance, even as a female who's just focused on fat loss.
Hmm.
And then it's understanding that they start to get into it more and they start to feel like the functionality is getting better. And then they're walking with the kids at the weekend and they're going for long walks up the mountain, what they never could do. And it's all about getting through daily life and having the functionality for long-term health and longevity, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that there are some great parallels between uh, exercise and nutrition, and in particular when it comes to how the general public view them. I think the big difference between nutrition and exercise is that with exercise you can tell typically pretty quickly, like, let's say if an exercise is not good for you, like, my shoulder felt weird the next day, I don't know if I should be doing this, or wow, I feel so much better after doing that, can we do more of these? Versus nutrition, it really does take a leap of faith and a trust in your coach or in whatever approach that you're following, because when you eat, you know, some grilled salmon and rice and broccoli and a glass of water, you don't wake up the next day feeling like, oh my gosh, this doesn't hurt anymore. That feels so much better.
Yeah.
You just, in many cases, you still feel hungry, especially if you're used to overeating. And so I think that more than anything, it's this, I've always found it much more difficult to try to guide people on the nutrition side of things, because it's more difficult to disabuse them of these ideas that they have in their head about what they can and can't eat, or what they should and shouldn't eat, versus training where the feedback is far, far quicker. So I'm curious, how do you guide people to take those leaps of faith, as it were, to get them to trust you to start taking these new steps in a better direction?
It's making little changes, little habit changes with the nutrition. So it's not throwing, right, I want you to change your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner overnight. It's just saying that. And it's also understanding that just by having, I mean, I can't say how many people I've worked with, even coaches, like female coaches and guys who have really got a wrong relationship with food. So like they might say, they flap about having an extra handful of blueberries on the porridge. And do you really think that extra handful of blueberries is going to make you gain a lot of weight?
Yeah.
It's like, and that's, I do feel like the bodybuilding industry, and the bodybuilding, I'm not bagging on the bodybuilding industry, and it's great and it's very dedicated profession, but I do see a lot of coaches kind of like training like bodybuilders and preaching bodybuilding methodology onto clientele and eating like bodybuilders and your general population is not they're not training for a competition.
Yeah.
But going back to your question, sorry, what you said is with the nutrition is it's just making little changes and it's understanding that when we say you've got your female who's a bit scared about carbohydrates, she feels like she's got this misconception about carbohydrates. She feels like carbohydrates are going to gain weight. She's been told off a friend to cut them out of the diet. She doesn't really know why. It's just saying to that female, let's just add a little bit of carbohydrates in with the lunch, and then let's just maybe look at the body. Personally, if someone's got an issue with the weight, I don't really like telling them to weigh themselves a lot. Really,
Yeah.
I like to get away from the scale. I like to look on pictures more and how they feel in terms of energy. And then if they're okay to eventually monitor the weight for performance and make sure the weight's not dropping, obviously not losing too much weight, then we would probably go at that. But what they do normally find is they increase the carbohydrates or whatever with a lunch, and then they're looking at the body. The body doesn't do nothing. It doesn't put any weight on. Doesn't change. It's not a big jump in calories. And then you start to, but then they start to feel a little bit different. They start to feel like they're sleeping a little bit better. They start
Hmm.
to feel like the weights are going up a bit more. I used to have a client once, and I had her for about a year and a half actually. And the first 6 months was a nightmare. I was always saying to her, "You're under eating. We're trying to." She wanted to do like weighted chin ups, and she wanted to get stronger and stuff. And the weights were always kind of stagnating. And I was saying to her all the time, I said, your carbohydrates and what you're doing, the amount of training, what you're doing, you're not eating enough. You're not eating nowhere enough. And she wouldn't listen to me. 6 months down the line, and I remember one night was in the gym and she was doing something, I forgot what it was, having a chin up or something, and she was dead exhausted. Literally, she dropped on the floor and she's like, "Oh, I just can't do it. I'm just exhausted. And I've had another day at work and this, that, and the other." And then within a week, it's like automatically she decided to change like that. So she went to the supermarket. She decided to include carbohydrates into the day. She had to eat a lot more protein, a lot more vegetables. And then, in case of a couple of months, performance went straight up. So performance numbers started to going up. People were stopping her, saying, "What kind of diet are you on?" She was saying, "I'm not. I'm eating far too. I'm eating a hell of a lot more carbohydrates." And I think I got her eventually. She's on like over 300 grams of carbohydrates a day. She's very small as well, the girl. And she understood that we have to put the right energy in the body to fuel performance, and it's not about being very restrictive. But that doesn't happen with a lot of people. You might get the person who's, even though they're saying they want to change, they don't really want to change.
Yeah.
They're saying to the coach they want to change, but then it takes a lot of, it's understanding the habits, it's understanding why you're doing it. So
Yeah.
it's like with anorexia, we're looking at the trigger, we're looking at why is the person emotionally doing this,
Certainly.
or why is the person overly eating? Why is a person who's obese, who's got obese and they've got a lot of weight in them? Why are they doing that? Why are they eating late at night? And why are they overeating with certain foods? And it's like it's coming back to the middle ground. It's like I said before, you got the two camps of people. You got the person who doesn't really want to start training and they feel like they have to do 5 days a week and they have to feel like to go on a strict regime to get started and they're procrastinating about it. Then you got the other person at the other end who's doing far too much training and the skirt in case they eat a bit of chocolate or they feel like they can't have no alcohol and they're dead strict and they feel like they can't go out for a meal. That's completely over end as well. So we're trying to pull to the middle ground.
Hmm.
We're trying to find a moderation in the middle ground with both people. And it's the same yourself. It's like you've probably done it when you was younger. You might have trained far too much, do too much. I remember I used to do push-ups every day to my arm, my
Yeah.
wrists were killing me. And you look back now and you think, what the hell was I doing? Like, and then you understand ratios about anatomy, and you understand that maybe doing all that shoulder work wasn't really good, and you don't counteract with maybe upper back work and
Yeah.
working on the lower back and the glutes and the hamstrings. And it's like obviously I'm certified with Strong First Now and stuff, and I've got other certifications, but it's like the strong first saying, which is press a lot, you have to press a lot kind of thing. That's a great saying, and that's true. But for some person, if they don't get the ratios right in terms of volume and their intensities, and they're trying to press every day, and then maybe they're trying even 3 days a week, that might wreck the shoulders. I mean,
Yeah.
they've got to understand how to train in moderation into it. It's understanding that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that a lot of people try to jam themselves into programs and protocols that they're not ready for. So the problem isn't even necessarily the protocol; it's that the person stubbornly wants to,
Exactly.
jam essentially a square peg into a round hole. And I have to mention this too because I think this is funny. You talked about there being two different kinds of people, and you gave that a great example of the gal who just finally just collapsed. She's like, I just do not have the energy for this. And sometimes it takes that. Other times it takes you could just say something to somebody like, well, you're going to have to do this. And they just trust you. And it reminds me of a quote by this American vaudeville actor named Will Rogers, who said, there are three kinds of men: the ones that learn by reading, the few who learn by observation, and the rest of them have to pee on the electric fence for themselves. And so I think a lot of people, that's definitely the case. They just need to, kind of experience the the consequences that you tell them, look, this is what's going to happen. And they don't believe you. And then when they experience it, they're like, okay, so that's why, I guess I really should do it in a different way. And you just have to be there to be able to help the people along at whatever stage they're at, whether they'll listen to you right off the bat, whether they'll look at what others are doing and see what actually works, or whether they got to pee on that electric fence. So now, where can people follow you online, and especially, and also where do you train so the people who want to train with you in person can seek you out?
Yeah, so I've got a gym in Manchester, Bury. Sorry, Bury, Manchester, and it's Evolve Fitness and Performance. So it's EV or LVE, Evolve Fitness and Performance. We're on Instagram, so Evolve Fitness and Performance. Our website, www.evolve-pt.co.uk. And that's the two ways of getting hold of me.
Mm-hmm. And I would say, I mean, okay, so for Americans, and maybe it won't make that much of a difference, but I was going to say, we would say evolve-pt.co.uk.
Yeah.
So if anybody's going to be in Bury, Manchester at any point, and you would like to look Matt up and do some training.
I mean, obviously, we kind of specialize a lot more with kettlebells nowadays. We've got a kettlebell club at the minute, which we kind of launched. That's doing well. We do small group personal training, and I do a lot of one-to-ones, obviously more sports specific, and obviously eating disorders and stuff like that as well. But yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I encourage everybody to go follow Evolve on Instagram. If you are in Bury, Manchester, then I highly, it's hard for me not to say Bury Manilow, because I Bury Man, it just comes out like that. Bury Manchester. And look up Matt. He's a great coach. He is, yes, he's a very smart guy, very insightful. And but
still learning, still learning. Always never stop learning. So
of course, but I will tell you this: he will let you pee on that electric fence if you so choose.
Yeah.
So be aware; he'll let you make those decisions on your own, but he'll guide you regardless. So Matt, thank you so much for being on the show.
Cheers, Ali. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. And folks, as always, have fun and happy training.